Number 10. Rose McGowan. So let's talk about the show Charmed for a second, a solid series that was on air for basically 10 years. The series followed three sisters that discover they are descendants of a long line of good female witches and are destined to fight against the forces of evil. Yes, it was a very fun show, however, just because you play sisters on set does not mean that you're always going to be close in real life. Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano had a very public altercation that resulted in a little incident on set being shared with the world. Rose claimed that Alyssa threw a fit in front of the crew, yelling, "They don't pay me enough to do this stuff," only she didn't say stuff. She called Alyssa's behavior appalling, claiming she cried every time that the show got renewed for another season because it just meant more time on a toxic set. Alyssa never shared her comments on the situation, confirming what she was being accused of. Number 9. Richard Gere. Richard Gere is one of those actors that doesn't really act. Sometimes people just get hired for films because they have a face for it or the style. For Richard, he did not have enough class and moxie to keep a handle on his role in the film Lords of the Flatbush. He was casted to star alongside Rocky himself, Sylvester Stallone, and according to Sly, the two didn't get along at all. Their beef was strong and long-lasting throughout the entire production until it finally came to a head one day when Richard was a bit too into one scene and he actually grabbed Sylvester pretty aggressively by the collar. When Sly told him to lay off, he laid in instead. The scene was being filmed on Coney Island, and when the actors took a minute to take a break, they tried to break each other. Sly was eating a hot dog alone in his car, which sounds pretty peaceful, and suddenly Richard stormed in, joined him with half of a chicken dripping in mustard, and despite his warnings about the mustard, seriously, it dripped all over his pants. In true Rocky fashion, he elbowed Richard in the face, threw him out of his car, and the altercation resulted in Richard being fired from the project. Oh no, they had to decide between Richard Gere and Rocky. I wonder how quick that decision was. Number 8. Selma Blair. It's funny that this entry involves Charlie Sheen getting a woman fired when he himself has been fired from so many projects because of, well, several reasons. After being fired from 2.5 Men, Sheen returned to the acting world, headlining his own show called Anger Management. It premiered in 2012 with cast featuring Hellboy alumni Selma Blair playing his colleague and friend with benefits on the show. However, Sheen's terrible behavior continued to haunt him from his 2.5 Men days. Blair was very vocal on her problems with Charlie, especially his messy work ethic. Charlie heard and he was having none of that, so he threatened to quit the show if Blair was going to remain a part of the cast. Sheen got his way and Blair was let go after starring in 54 episodes. The show didn't last long though. Who would have guessed that a messy actor being the lead was a bad idea? It got cancelled in 2014. Next up, 7. Shannen Doherty. Unfortunately for Shannen Doherty, she gained quite the reputation in Hollywood for being fired due to issues with her co-stars. She may or may not be making another appearance on this list. Who knows? Guess you'll have to stick around to find out. For the first entry, we're going to look back to the very popular series teen drama 90210, a series following the lives of the Walsh family as they move from Minneapolis to Beverly Hills. Doherty played the character Brenda Walsh, with her character eventually befriending several students at Beverly Hills High, including Donna Martin, played by Tori Spelling. The series was a hit after its initial season, however, with increased popularity came massive egos. Doherty and Spelling started clashing on set constantly, adding additional drama to the production team that really just didn't need to be there. Considering Tori's father, Aaron Spelling, was the producer on the show, it's pretty simple to piece together what happened. Doherty claimed that she was officially let go for having a haircut that messed up the continuity of the show, but a wig could have fixed that, so better believe Tori Spelling told her papa to boot her from the series. Number 6. Edward Norton. As we all know, Edward Norton didn't last long as the Incredible Hulk in the MCU, only being in one movie in 2008. By the way, I've read some of the comments, and no, Edward Norton was not the first person to play the Hulk on screen. The honor goes to Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby from the original series, and don't you dare get me started on Eric Bana, looking like he's farting every time he turns into the Hulk. The 2008 film was a success, but not a massive box office goat. The studio were at odds and they wanted to keep using the Hulk and incorporate him into the Avengers, but Edward Norton was becoming increasingly difficult to work with. When he was contacted to keep playing the character, he demanded more money from the studio. However, he was already on thin ice following his time filming The Incredible Hulk. While not some wild on-set meltdown, Norton did make some pretty odd choices. For instance, as part of his contract, he was allowed to rewrite the script as much as he wanted, but it still needed to be approved. So he wrote new scripts over and over again until we got the 2008 Incredible Hulk movie with some of Ed's ideas baked into the final script. Kevin Feige claims that the choice to part ways with Ed was not based on money, but instead on Marvel just wishing to hire an actor that embodies the creative and collaboration side of their talented members. Essentially, Essentially, he was like, Mark Ruffalo's nicer than you and he doesn't write his scripts, so bye-bye. This ended up being a great decision on both parts though, because Mark Ruffalo is fantastic as Bruce Banner and the Hulk, and Edward went on to make several high-quality films, including a few collaborations with Wes Anderson. Moonrise Kingdom would not have been the same without Edward Norton as Scoutmaster Ward. Number 5. Anne Hathaway. So fun fact that I was unaware of until today, Anne Hathaway was almost a secondary lead in one of the most universally loved Seth Rogen movies of all time. Knocked Up from 2007 follows Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl as they prepare for the arrival of an unplanned baby after a one-night stand. The cast was packed with stellar comedians like Paul Rudd, Jonah Hill, Leslie Mann, so many more, and the cast almost featured an up-and-coming actor at the time, Anne Hathaway. Anne is famous these days for roles in movies like Princess Diary, Interstellar, and Ocean's 8. These days, she's considered to be at the top of the A-list. In 2013, she even took home her first Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. Now, before this though, she actually agreed to be in Knocked Up because she thought the script was great and that Seth Rogen, is Seth Rogen. You work with him every chance you can. However, she eventually decided not to participate in the film after one issue with the script became cause for concern. The scene in question was one of the final moments in the film, which for those of you who have seen the movie know is pretty graphic. The birthing scene in Knocked Up ended up being a combination of Katherine acting and some close-up clips of her cookie. Anne read that part and decided that her first role in a major comedy movie should maybe be something else. Although it was confirmed that it was not going to be her bits and bobs on display, she has a no birthday suit clause. It worked out for everyone though, because Katherine did a great job despite hating the set apparently, and Anne Hathaway is one of the biggest movie stars to date, so good for her. Number 4. Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is one of the groundbreaking actors and directors from the 1960s and 70s New Hollywood, eventually finding his niche in the early 90s, playing villains in movies like Speed, Waterworld, and the live-action Mario Brothers movie, where he plays Bowser. Yes, that exists. No, it's not good. So it came as no surprise when he was casted to play Christoph, the all-powerful TV producer controlling Truman Burbank's life in the movie The Truman Show. The cast was incredible and included Hollywood heavyweight Jim Carrey as the titular Truman. Anyone with a brain cell would have been excited to be a part of this film, still considered to be one of his best dramatic performances. However, 2 days into filming his scenes for Christoph, which were only expected to take about 10 days to film, Hopper was unceremoniously let go from the set. Apparently, Dennis had a contract in place with producer Scott Rudin that he would be fired should his work be unsatisfactory. He must have been pretty bad in the role, as the director Peter Weir has been described as extremely reluctant to ever remove an actor from a movie. Reports later surfaced that Hopper was basically half asleep while playing the character, and while Christoph wasn't written to be like a manic man or anything, he did require some effort to be properly pulled off. Ultimately, Ed Harris stepped in to play the role after production had been desperately trying to replace Dennis to avoid having the film be shut down entirely. Thankfully, that never happened, and The Truman Show has gone on to be one of the most depressingly heartfelt Jim Carrey performances ever. Oh, and Ed actually got nominated for an Oscar, so sorry Dennis, looks like it was a good move. Number 3. Jean-Claude Van Damme. The Belgian actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was just on the verge of coming into his own career as the Muscles from Brussels when he landed a job opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1987's action flick Predator. This sounded like the perfect casting choice. Jean would have worked alongside the likes of Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura. While this may have turned out cool, the reality was that Jean wasn't casted to play one of the Marines at all. Instead, he was casted to play the titular Predator himself. The special effects artists behind the project called the experience with Jean as a hilarious comedy of errors, in which no party knew exactly what the other was expecting. Apparently, nobody actually told him that the role was basically just a glorified stuntman. They were prepared to direct him to just hop around like a frog, but Jean was obviously confused and upset with that choice. According to him, he had just gotten off the boat and was under the impression that he was going to be showcasing his martial arts skills to the world, but instead he was reduced to a massive, slow-moving alien with dreadlocks. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, Van Damme was furious and dispirited about spending the entire movie cooped up in a clunky and often ridiculous-looking suit, and he was ultimately fired and replaced with Kevin Peter Hall. The idea that he was just on set being like, I can barely move in this thing, it makes me so happy. Number 2. Janet Hubert. Will Smith got his big break in the acting world thanks to the success of the sitcom Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's a show following Will as the titular prince living with a wealthy family in Bel-Air surrounded by cousins, uncles, and of course Aunt Vivian. In season 1, Aunt Viv was played by a woman named Janet Hubert Witten, but as a lot of people know, she was recasted after an on-set feud with Will Smith went a little bit step too far. According to Will, Janet viewed him as an antagonist in her life. She had been in the business for years, and suddenly Will Smith popped into her life, and she had a tinge of jealousy towards him because he got into town, got a gig. Well, hey, that's what happens when you're good. She was trying to convince the producers to give her character more screen time and allow her to breathe on camera, but they said no because it wasn't the Aunt Viv show. She fought back hard, but it was ultimately decided that she would be asked to sit out the rest of the series and was replaced by Daphne Maxwell Reid, who is Aunt Viv. Number 1. Thomas Gibson. Thomas made a name for himself, starring as one of the leads of the series Criminal Minds. He was on the show for a few years, and in that time he made quite a few problems for those unfortunate enough to be staff members of the series. There were a few issues over the years that would have warranted some action, like screaming at producers and writers for not doing a good job. But the incident that got him kicked off of the show for good involved, well, a kick. In 2016, Thomas was swiftly fired from the series after an incident with a writer named Virgil Williams. An internal investigation revealed that Thomas kicked Virgil one day during production of an episode that Gibson was actually directing. And as I said, this isn't the first incident on set that really should have resulted in some kind of punishment, because 3 years earlier, in 2013, he pleaded no contest to no juice related reckless driving after being arrested under suspicion of DUI, and 3 years before that, he allegedly shoved an assistant director, Ian Wolfe, during a late night location scene. That led to the studio ordering Gibson to take 8 hours of anger management. According to most people on the set, Thomas was a wild card. Some days he was friendly and accommodating, and the next he went ballistic.
J-Lo is being slammed online for her behavior in an interview on the Met Gala steps. J-Lo was a co-chair for the 2024 Met Gala and wore an eye-catching beaded Schiaparelli gown to the charity event. She was seen smiling and posing on the carpet, but not everyone received that megawatt smile. TikToker Annika Reed was present at the Met as an interviewer on the side. She was up close and personal with the stars and got some great shots of the celebs as they ascended the carpet. She was also close enough to ask celebs questions as they were heading up. And it seems not everyone was happy about that. As J-Lo was making her way past Reed, Reed shouted, "Who are you wearing tonight?" Pretty standard red carpet question, but J-Lo appeared less than impressed. With only a glance over, J-Lo responds with a quick Schiaparelli before continuing up. When Reed posted the video to her TikTok, the caption suggests she didn't mind J-Lo's response, but the comment section sure did. Many people calling J-Lo out for being rude. One person saying Reed receiving a rude J-Lo interaction was the J-Lo experience. Another person writing, "Ew, why she have that attitude?" In comparison to other celebs who met Reed's questions with big smiles and the occasional full-length interview, J-Lo's reaction does make her appear as the outlier. The Met Gala isn't the first major event where J-Lo was criticized for her actions on the carpet. Glam bots have increased in popularity over the years for good reason. They are the perfect way to showcase a celeb's look and almost always make people look amazing. A glam bot of J-Lo was posted for her birthday in 2022, but the video did not garner the response the poster probably hoped for. In the video, we can see Cole, the person who runs the glam bot, explaining to Jennifer as she walks up what is going to happen with the camera, just how it all works basically. Jennifer appears to be uninterested in what he's saying or distracted from other people talking about red carpets. We know that they are pretty fast paced, kind of like go go go, so maybe J-Lo really had somewhere to be, or there was a big lineup so she was trying to keep a schedule. We never will know. The ending of the video does not paint her in the best light. As part of her glam bot, the singer's movements involved taking a step to the side, and then that step turned into her walking off. It's not shown if she said goodbye to Cole or anyone else working on the glam bots, but it doesn't appear that way. So naturally, people are pretty upset about it and leaving their thoughts in the comment section. One person writing, "She doesn't look very friendly." Another commenting, "Not her," immediately walking away. Cole did film a glam bot behind the scenes for this particular video, where he explained the situation, saying they had very limited time, about 30 seconds, and he wasn't expecting to see J-Lo, so it was an in and out kind of situation. Back in October of 2023, J-Lo was photographed throwing up a rude gesture to paparazzi. The singer was photographed out with her husband Ben Affleck in the morning, and she was not very happy about it. Like many people online said though, can you blame her? She just wanted to head out for a quick breakfast with her husband and was instead hounded by cameras. Expressing her frustration, J-Lo threw up her middle finger at the paparazzi paparazzi with a tight-lipped half smile. The photo went viral online and the response was half and half. Some people said she was being rude and the behavior was unacceptable. Others were more forgiving towards the star, bringing up that even Hollywood stars deserve privacy and are real people too. It's unclear if JLo was prompted to do the action just because of the situation, or if something happened or was said to cause it. Jennifer Lopez attended the Grammys with new husband Ben Affleck in 2023, and the two were caught on camera looking less than pleased with each other. The X account Chicks in the Office posted a video of the couple with the caption, "Someone please check on Ben Affleck." The video posted was about 30 seconds and it features host Trevor Noah sitting beside the couple. Since he was seated directly next to them and talking, the couple either didn't realize the camera was on them or the moment was a very believable bit. In the clip, you can see JLo speaking to Affleck in what looks like it could be a stern tone. As the camera gets closer, JLo lightly hits Affleck's chest before giving him a displeased look and turning away looking frustrated. Affleck also is looking a bit disgruntled for the remainder of the video. Once Jennifer does turn around and realize where the camera is, she starts laughing and smiling again. Ben offers a little half smile, but mainly keeps a straight face. Interesting video of JLo seemingly flirting has made the rounds on social media. The video is weird, I don't know how else to put it. It's a heavily slowed down shot of JLo making a funny face towards someone behind her. The camera pans to someone who looks like a DJ. There are over 25,000 comments on the video and lots of them are saying JLo is flirting with the person. One person writing, "So disrespectful, poor Ben." The video was posted in May of last year and people are also up in arms about this video since JLo is standing directly beside her future husband Ben Affleck. Other angles of the moment show JLo jamming out to the music. Even Ben offered a little shuffle and that's when JLo looked the DJ's way. The clip is from the premiere of JLo's 2023 movie The Mother. JLo went viral when on-set footage resurfaced of her spitting gum into an assistant's hand. The video was taken about 6 years ago now, and yet it still causes a stir every once in a while. Reposted all across the internet, the 20-second video shows JLo, presumably on the set of a TV or film. I'm guessing that the cameras are about to roll, but JLo is chewing gum, the method of choice chosen to get rid of that gum, and the situation appears to be spitting it directly in someone's hand. After the video went viral, again, people started pointing out that they are on a street and a major movie set. A trash can has to be nearby, or at least a tissue. Some people have commented on the clip when it was posted to a TikTok page, pointing out that JLo has a purse in her hand. Were there no tissues in there? People are just generally upset and mildly disgusted by the action. One person commenting, "I have never been in a situation where I felt the need to spit anything into someone's hand. I would swallow the gum before I would do something so disgusting." Those arguing in favor of JLo have brought up that the behavior is common on film sets, but the biggest player coming to JLo's defense in the situation is actually the assistant in the video. She took to her X social media account to set the record straight. She clarified that there was a tissue in her hand and she requested that JLo spit the gum in her hand. She also said that there were large crowds present and it was winter and they were waiting for a light to change so that they could film, so there were a lot of factors that made the situation one where they had to move quickly. The assistant noted that spitting the gum in her hand was the most efficient solution at the time. Much to the displeasure of the star, the paparazzi can't seem to get enough of JLo. A video of Jennifer interacting with paparazzi was posted to TikTok in November of 2023, and like most of the other ones, she is not happy to be there. At the start of this video, we can hear the pop in question congratulate her and Ben. From that, and when this video was posted, I'm assuming the congratulations were about the pair's wedding a few months prior. Though the pop is trying to speak positively, JLo is still quite upset being followed around. As she is getting into her car, we can hear JLo say something along the lines of, "Nobody likes leaving their house and having you guys follow them every single day," finishing off her statement with a final, "Nobody likes that," as she continues getting in her car. The paparazzi filming can be heard saying, "I understand, Jennifer, I get you," as they continue to get closer to the star. Other footage released of the encounter shows an annoyed-looking JLo and Ben. The spotlight was stolen by a couple's argument at the premiere of JLo's 2023 movie, The Mother. JLo and her future husband Ben Affleck were photographed and filmed on the red carpet, and they did not seem overjoyed to be there. The pair appeared to be arguing with each other on the carpet. It's unclear what about. It could be something serious or something simple, like where they're going to stand next. They were pointing somewhere in the distance, so maybe they were debating whether or not to go inside. Regardless, the two look like they are exchanging heated words in front of the camera. The clip ends with Affleck moving off screen, likely giving JLo her moment with the cameras, as it was her movie after all. This clip is from the same premiere that the flirting clip was from. Paparazzi caught JLo after she was locked out of her gym, and the star was not happy about it, directing the F-bomb their way before she left in her car. In a clip posted to Daily Mail's TikTok, the Jenny from the Block singer can be seen running to her upscale gym's front door in bright neon yellow workout clothes. Only when she gets there, she is left waiting outside, the door is locked, and no one is coming to answer. I mean, this would be frustrating for anyone, but the star also has all the cameras watching her to deal with. Naturally, she grows aggravated and gives up the wait, getting back into her car. The pops get a bit closer to the star as she's trying to enter the car. You can hear the star tell them to go away. JLo leaves the pops with an "F you, bye." The video ends before we can see her car drive off. A clip from JLo's new documentary of the singer talking about award-winning dancer and choreographer Derek Hough went viral online because it appears that JLo is trying to move his wedding plans around to accommodate her movie. That sounds really bad, but that is absolutely what it looks like from the short clip. JLo is seen talking with people on her team. It looks like she is looking for someone to either choreograph or be in the movie, and she wants a good dancer. Professional dancer and Dancing with the Stars performer Val is brought up as a choice, but JLo isn't feeling it. She very clearly wants Derek. She says, "I mean, I know Val was available, but I want you to call Derek." She then goes on to say that she only needs him for 1 or 2 days. But as a member of her team quickly points out, he was busy because he was in a wedding. It was revealed by Derek at the premiere that it wasn't just any wedding, it was his wedding. Well, he revealed he received a call from JLo in the middle of planning his wedding, so people connected the dots from there. In the clip that went viral, JLo is unyielding and insists that Derek be called anyway. After the movie came out, Derek joined E! News for an interview where he clarified that JLo did not make him change his schedule. She flipped her schedule around for him. He also went on to say that JLo provided guidance and help while he was planning his wedding. So what do you think of all this? How do you feel about Jenny from the Block? Let us know in the comments section. Have a great rest of your day. Bye!
First up, let's have a look at James Franco and Tyrese. An on-set fight nearly destroyed the careers of these two prominent actors. While both of them have gone on to have very successful careers in some of the most memorable movies in recent times, the time they spent working together couldn't have gone any worse. While they were filming Annapolis back in 2006, Franco and Tyrese would constantly get involved in verbal disputes with each other, and eventually things took a turn for the worse and got violent. Tyrese revealed in an interview that the pair of young actors actually got into a full-on fistfight on set and had to be separated by the film crew. Tyrese tried to tell his co-star to back off and lighten up, but Franco apparently wasn't going to back down. The fight was apparently so bad that production of the movie had to be halted for a full day to allow the two actors to collect themselves and put aside their differences. While they were able to push through and finish the movie, it was so obvious that the working relationship between Franco and Tyrese was completely over. It seems like there is a very good reason why these two actors never really reconnected after this terrible affair. Next is Viola Davis and Jared Leto. Viola Davis called out her co-star for being too much like the Joker. Yes, when Jared Leto was taking on the role of the Joker back in 2016, he was really taking the job a little too seriously. Now obviously it's good for an actor to stay in character so they don't lose their touch, but it sounds like Leto took things a little bit too far. His co-star Viola Davis claimed that Leto would stay in character the whole time they were filming, and he would continue his character's psychopathic tendencies off set. The catalyst in the strange behavior was when Jared Leto apparently sent a box of bullets to Viola Davis. This seemed like much more than a joke to Davis, to the point where she was actually worried for her own safety. She had no idea if there was any sort of subliminal message behind the strange package, and she even claimed that she nearly pulled out her pepper spray. Viola went on to clarify that she was incredibly tough and even got into a fight when she was younger, but this strange moment really affected her in a very dark way. There have been multiple disturbing cases of actors taking their roles too far. This also isn't the first strange thing that Jared Leto has ever done. Aside from his outlandish outfit, scaling the Empire State Building to promote his band, supposedly running a cult, this honestly might not have been the weirdest thing that Leto's ever done. Next is Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall. Friends turned to enemies after some very hurtful words were exchanged. They may have appeared as best friends on TV, but the two were anything but that off screen. The feud apparently all started around pay. A 2008 report actually revealed that Cattrall approached the producers about a pay increase after she found out that SJP was making considerably more money for for appearing on the exact same show. The two stars have taken jabs at each other online and in the press on numerous occasions. It sounds like it went well beyond an internet feud. It has also been reported that Parker had convinced the studio to write Cattrall's character out of the rebooted version of their famous TV series. Cattrall claimed that this was a lie and she didn't return for the reboot just because she didn't want to. She also stated that SJP had no control over her career and she could make her own decisions. Parker even tried to make amends with Cattrall in 2018 after the passing of Kim's brother, but even that didn't work. Parker passed along her condolences, but Cattrall stated that she was not her family or her friend and didn't want her sympathy. This was a really nasty feud that just never ended up finding a solution. After that is Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson. The Fast and Furious set was in turmoil after these two superstars nearly came to blows. Now, it's no secret that the Fast and the Furious is one of the biggest movie franchises of this generation. They have now generated over $7 billion in revenue over the last 20 years. But even with all the commercial success they were enjoying, two of the franchise's main stars became very agitated with each other on the set of the franchise's 8th film, The Fate of the Furious. Diesel and Johnson were apparently at odds throughout the duration of the movie's production, and The Rock even took to Instagram to publicly address his feelings about his co-star. He wrote that some of his co-stars conducted themselves as stand-up men while others just did not. He then went on to congratulate the entire crew after they wrapped up filming for the movie, but Diesel was noticeably absent from Johnson's post. Well, this didn't go over well with Diesel, who also happens to be a co-producer of the film. He clearly held all the power in this scenario and made sure The Rock was absent from the following sequels. It seems like they might have set aside their differences now, as The Rock's return was teased at the end of Fast 10. So we will just have to see if these guys could actually get along and get back to producing ridiculous over-the-top action. Up next is Sylvester Stallone and Richard Gere. These two Hollywood powerhouses nearly came to blows over a messy lunch. It turns out that Richard Gere was supposed to appear in Lords of the Flatbush with Sylvester Stallone. He was cast alongside the Rambo actor in the film, but things took a very nasty turn while they were working together on set. It was pretty obvious that the pair didn't really like each other from the get-go. The film crew was probably expecting them to just put their differences aside and get on with the filming. Well, as it turns out, that was not the case. Stallone really wasn't too fond of his co-star's attitude, and it seems like Gere believed that he was better than everybody else. Stallone stated that he would strut around his oversized motorcycle jacket like he was the baddest knight at the round table. But things really got spicy when the actors were practicing a fight scene and Gere got carried away in the moment. Stallone told him to back off after Gere grabbed onto him violently, but Gere was completely stuck in his character. But the one moment that really pushed Stallone over the edge was when the pair got into a car to have their lunch. Stallone was eating a plain hot dog, but Gere was chowing down on a very greasy chicken. Sylvester warned his co-star that it was going to get messy, but Gere didn't listen and dripped grease onto Stallone's thigh. That's when Rambo pushed his co-star out of the car and gave the director an ultimatum. And as we now know, only Stallone appeared in the film while Gere was sent packing. Up next is Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling. One of the most captivating romance films in recent times almost never happened. While many people were blown away by the chemistry between the two actors in The Notebook, turns out the two stars had a pretty tough time coexisting when the cameras weren't rolling. Director Nick Cassavetes revealed that McAdams and Gosling had to work through some pretty tough times on set in order for the movie to be completed. He stated that the actors didn't really care for each other too much, and it created some serious issues during production of the movie. The director even revealed that at one point, Gosling had asked him if he could bring in another actress to read lines with. Gosling also claimed that McAdams just wasn't giving him anything that he could work with. It was impossible to build any chemistry. This caused Cassavetes to force the two actors into a closed-door meeting so they could work out their differences, and that ended up turning into an all-out screaming match. Well, it seemed like the screaming match actually worked on this occasion because they were able to return to filming and actually ended up dating each other in real life. Their working relationship, however, was pretty much over after The Notebook. After that, let's look at Leonardo DiCaprio and Clint Eastwood. An on-set feud has completely tainted the relationship between these two cinema icons. The legendary Hollywood figures have appeared in front of and behind the camera for some of the greatest movies of all time. However, an on-set feud during the filming of Eastwood's 2011 film J. Edgar resulted in a terrible hatred that has only been building ever since. While they were filming a scene where DiCaprio had to react to a bomb explosion, the actor was just not pleased with his reaction. DiCaprio asked if he could do a retake to improve on his performance, and that is where everything went downhill. Eastwood is very well known for his one-take method of directing and declared that filming for the day was complete and walked off the set. Now, DiCaprio was so enraged by that incident that he turned down a role in another Eastwood film, and this left a very sour taste in the mouth of the legendary Hollywood creator. Both of these Hollywood icons have vowed to never work with with each other again after the strange incident, but seems like the budding personalities were just never a good match for each other. Up next is Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman. Sometimes physical contact on set is just unacceptable. Meryl Streep is obviously a very well-known actress nowadays, and when she was just getting her start in the film industry, she had a very uncomfortable experience with Dustin Hoffman. Streep's first major film appearance was Kramer vs. Kramer with Dustin Hoffman, but things weren't always going according to plan on set. While the pair of actors were shooting the opening scene for the film, Hoffman decided to improvise with a very heavy slap across the face to Meryl Streep. Now, Streep obviously wasn't expecting this, and it sounds like it really hurt. Sure, Hoffman was just trying to emphasize his character's actions, but this was probably a little bit too far. But if that didn't cross the line already, he also used what Streep labeled emotional recall when he taunted her about her late partner John Cazale and his terminal illness. Streep was completely blown away by the strange encounter and found it really hard to forgive her co-star for this bizarre moment. And considering that this was only just the opening scene, we can only imagine that there were even more tense moments between the two actors on set. Up next is Charlie Sheen and Selma Blair. Charlie Sheen and drama really just go hand in hand. While Sheen was involved in plenty of controversies over the years that have earned him more than a few enemies, he ended up finding himself in yet another feud after starring in the sitcom Anger Management. Apparently, Sheen and his co-star Selma Blair did not see eye to eye on many topics, and this led to a ton of on-set altercations. While Blair was obviously not afraid to voice her displeasure with her co-star, it proved to be a rather risky move for her time as an actress on this show. In addition to being the show's lead actor, Sheen was also one of the series' producers, which meant that he held a lot of power over the show's casting and its direction. After various on-set fights and arguments between these two actors, it was announced that Blair's time on the series was finished and she would not be returning. Now, it was later revealed, however, that Blair had an issue with Sheen's work ethic and was not shy about letting him know. But instead of trying to work things out or actually improve on his performance, Sheen sent a flurry of angry messages to Blair letting her know that she was fired and she would never be welcomed back. And last but not least, the cast of Glee vs. Lea Michele. The Glee superstar's entire cast members turned on her after revealing that she was a terrible person to work with. Now, this was a show that captured the hearts of many across the world, but when the cameras weren't rolling, it was an incredibly tense affair. Samantha Ware absolutely ripped into Michelle on Twitter, claiming her co-star made the working environment a living hell. She also claimed that Michelle threatened to defecate in her wig at any given opportunity. Now, this obviously kickstarted some massive backlash against Michelle, who lost brand sponsorships, and Ware wasn't the only person who had something to say about the Glee star. Heather Morris also stated that Michelle was incredibly unpleasant to work with, and other Glee co-stars were even labeling her as a racist. Even Matthew Morrison, who played Mr. Schuester on the show, sort of alluded to the fact that Lea was incredibly difficult to work with. He didn't get into many details when asked about her on Fubar Radio, but he did say that you want to be a pleasant person to be around, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Michelle did try to save face by issuing public apologies, but it was so obvious the damage was already done. This was something that she really just never recovered from in her career.
Number 10, Lindsay Lohan. In the early 2000s, Lindsay Lohan faced a ton of public scandals, but one that's not talked about often enough actually took place behind the scenes of a little show called Ugly Betty. Lohan was a guest star on the show in the third season playing Kimmy Keegan. Kimmy was supposed to stick around for 6 total episodes, but that number was shrunken down to just 4. The reason being was her co-star and, the lead of the show, America Ferrera, just didn't get along with Lindsay on set. According to America and several of the Ugly Betty crew members, Lindsay would just show up with an entourage of people, usually under the influence of herbs and spices, and the production crew had to repaint her dressing room when she left because it was just so messed up. One crew member alleged that she would cut images of her own face out of magazines and tabloid articles as if she were making a collage of some kind. America claims that one scene took over 30 takes to get right because they just kept flubbing their lines. Lindsay's team of buddies have been adamant that America had too much power and was the sole reason that she was asked to leave the show. Unfortunately, if you do bad things and enough people know about it, karma comes around. Number 9, Julianne Moore. Creative differences, the phrase that has been behind some of the most tragic Hollywood stories in films that could have been, and in this case, roles. For an industry centered around creativity, the movie industry can be awfully risk-averse, especially when it comes to the decision of casting a lead. Now, it's not uncommon for actors to suddenly be thrust out of productions in lieu of a new face, or in some cases, the original choice that you were replacing. A good example of doing it yourself, though, is Julianne Moore. The actor from films like the 2013 reboot of Carrie and the action flick Kingsman: Golden Circle was set to play the leading lady in the critically acclaimed dramedy Can You Ever Forgive Me? And she was casted as the character Lee Israel, a writer who falls out of step with current culture and decides to embellish her writing, basically inventing the concept of fake news. Julianne began filming her scenes, but was asked to leave the production only 1 month into filming. According to the director Nicole Hollifner, portrayal of her character just wasn't what she had in mind while writing. Julianne played the role with too much of herself, influencing the overall appeal. When directed to try to play the role another way, Julianne continued to give a similar performance, and she was ultimately replaced by Melissa McCarthy, better known for her more comedic roles in movies like The Heat and Bridesmaids, but her turn as Lee is considered to be one of her greatest acting achievements of all time, even landing her a nomination for Best Actress at the 2019 Oscar ceremony. Julianne didn't take the news all that well, but did eventually move on and has made a couple of solid flicks since, so it all worked out in the end for everybody. Number 8. Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler is best known for his role as the Fonz on Happy Days, and he was set to direct Tom Hanks in the much-loved buddy cop movie Turner and Hooch. Unfortunately, these two had a pretty rough history together before that. The Fonz had actually fought with Hanks in character on the set of Happy Days for an episode a few years before, and it would appear that Tom wishes that he could fight Henry for real. As rumor has it, the two of them just didn't get along at all, so much so that a few days into filming Turner and Hooch, with Henry behind the wheel, Tom ordered Winkler to be removed from the set and replaced as director. That's the kind of power Tom Hanks wields. He can just walk on set and be like, no. Not only did Tom complain that Henry's behavior as director was annoying, he complained that Henry was just overall bad at his job. It would take double the average time to reset a shot on set, he had minimal control over his actors, and he was apparently very frustrated with having a dog on the set. Like, did he even read the script before he took the job? That dog is a national treasure. What makes this firing even more tragic is the fact that when Winkler was delivered the news, one of the film's producers ripped Henry's contract up in front of his face. Over the years, when asked about the incident, Henry denies that he's ever had any kind of personal or professional issues with Tom Hanks. Tom's never given us any reason to think that he would lie about something like that. What would he have to gain? I defeated the Fonz. Hey, so did ABC when they canceled his show. Number 7, Jean-Claude Van Damme. The Belgian actor Jean-Claude Van Damme was just on the verge of coming into his own career as the Muscles from Brussels when he landed a job opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1987's action flick Predator. Now, this sounded like the perfect casting choice, right? Jean would have worked alongside the likes of Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura, and while that may have turned out cool, the reality was that John wasn't casted to play a role as one of the Marines at all. Instead, he was casted to play the titular Predator himself. The special effects artist behind the project called the experience with John as a hilarious comedy of errors, in which nobody knew exactly what the other was expecting. Apparently, nobody had informed Jean that the role was basically just a glorified stuntman. They were prepared to direct him to just hop around like a frog, but John was obviously confused and upset with this choice. According to John, he had just gotten off the boat, and he was under the impression that he was going to be showcasing his martial arts skills to the world, but was instead reduced to a massive, slow-moving alien with dreadlocks. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, Van Damme was furious and dispirited about spending this entire movie coked up in a clunky and often ridiculous-looking suit, and was ultimately fired and replaced with Kevin Peter Hall. The idea that he was just on set like, I can barely move in this thing, just brings me so much joy. Number 6, Shia LaBeouf. In 2013, Alec Baldwin was attached to star in a Broadway production of the show Orphans alongside Transformers alumni Shia LaBeouf. Now, from day one of rehearsal, Shia and Baldwin were at each other's throats. Shia's problem was that Alec was not off script. This was something that he considered to be very unprofessional. Shia has since claimed that he was so nervous about the show that he made sure to memorize his lines before he even set foot on the stage. His methods were not reciprocated by Alec, who simply showed up with coffee in one hand and a script in the other one, planning to rehearse in the moment. Shia was furious and apparently yelled at Alec to learn his lines right now. He was the lead. That's the deal. After a couple of weeks and one particularly rough day where Shia blew up at him in front of a ton of cast and crew, Alec took 5 and had a meeting with the producers. He said that if Shia wasn't let go, that he was gonna quit. Well, producers caved and Shia was let go. In the tabloid, they claimed creative differences, but Shia later shared his side, clearly upset with being dropped as if he meant nothing to the show. Number 5, Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper is one of the groundbreaking actors and directors of the 1960s and 70s New New Hollywood, now eventually finding his niche in the early 90s, playing villains in films like Speed, Waterworld, and the live-action Mario movie where he plays Bowser. Yes, that exists. No, it's not good. So it came as no surprise when he was casted to play Kristoff, the all-powerful TV producer controlling Truman Burbank's life in the film The Truman Show. The cast was stacked and it included Hollywood heavyweight Jim Carrey as the titular Truman. Anyone with a brain cell would have been excited to be a part of this movie, still considered to be one of Jim's best dramatic performances. However, 2 days into filming his scenes for Kristoff, which were only supposed to take 10 days to film, Hopper was unceremoniously let go from the set. Apparently, Dennis had a contract in place with producer Scott Rudin that he would be fired should his work be unsatisfactory. He must have been pretty bad in the role, as the director Peter Weir has been described as extremely reluctant to ever remove an actor from a movie. Reports later surfaced that Hopper was basically half asleep while playing the character, and while Kristoff wasn't written to be, a manic madman, he did require just a little bit of effort to be properly portrayed. Ultimately, Ed Harris stepped in to play the role after production had been desperately trying to replace Dennis to avoid having this film be shut down entirely. Thankfully, that never happened, and The Truman Show has gone on to be one of the most depressingly heartfelt films Jim Carrey has ever made. Oh, and Ed actually got nominated for an Oscar, so sorry Dennis, looks like they made a good move. Number 4, Eric Stoltz. Alright, here, let's talk about a little bit of the 1985 comedy sci-fi Back to the Future. I loved this movie growing up. The story followed Marty McFly, a high school student who's accidentally sent back to 1955 in a DeLorean invented by his close friend and scientist Dr. Emmett Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, and no, we're not going to talk about that friendship even though it's a little strange. And they're forced to get his future parents together before he disappears from existence. Now, whoever pitched this movie must have been lacking some sleep. The film went on to spawn 2 sequels, creating what's considered to be one of the greatest film trilogies of all time, and while Michael J. Fox may have played the iconic Marty McFly, he actually wasn't the first actor to put on that puffy vest. A young man named Eric Stoltz was initially casted to play the role. You may not recognize Eric because his most famous character was drenched in prosthetics and makeup, playing the character of Roy L. Dennis in the film Mask, a man with severe facial and skull deformities. He was nearly halfway through shooting this movie when the news came that he was going to be replaced by Michael J. Fox. Fox was the director Robert Zemeckis' first choice, but he was initially unable to sign on to the project because of his prior commitments to the show Family Ties. Eventually, though, the 2 studios were able to find a way to make it work and allowed him to film both projects. This is why you may notice that a majority of Marty's scenes that take place outside are at night, because it was the only time that he could film for like 60% of this movie. Robert wanted Eric out from the very beginning though, because his portrayal of the character was just too intense, a lot more intense than the writers had in mind, not to mention Eric read the end of the movie as a tragedy instead of a happy ending. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 40 years old. At the end of the first film, Marty returns to 1985 after successfully getting his parents together, but instead of being poor and depressed, the family is thriving and successful, and somehow Eric took that as Marty being an outsider in a world he didn't know. But just like, look at the truck he has parked in his garage, like nothing tragic about that. His intensity combined with his depressing performance of the finale got him kicked off of the film only minutes after Fox was available. Number 3, Alyssa Milano. Alright, let's talk about the show Charmed, a solid series that was on the air for 10 years. The series followed 3 sisters that discover they're descendants of a line of good female witches and are destined to fight against the forces of evil. Yeah, it was a fun show. However, just because you play sisters on set doesn't mean that you're gonna be close in real life. Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano had a very public altercation that resulted in a little incident on set being shared with the world. Rose claimed that Alyssa threw a fit in front of the crew, yelling that they didn't pay her enough to do the things she was doing, only she didn't say things she was doing. She said a bad word. She called Alyssa's behavior appalling, claiming that she cried every time the show got renewed for another season because it meant more time on a toxic set. Alyssa never shared her own comments on the situation and was eventually let go from the show, confirming what she was being accused of. Number 2, Thomas Gibson. Thomas made a name for himself starring as one of the leads of the series Criminal Minds. He was on the show for a few years, and in that time he made a few problems for the people unfortunate enough to be staff members of the series. There were a few issues over the years that would have warranted some action, like screaming at producers and writers for not doing a good job, but the incident that got him kicked off the show for good involved a kick. In 2016, Thomas was swiftly fired from the series after an incident with a writer named Virgil Williams. An internal investigation revealed that Thomas kicked Virgil one day during production of an episode that Gibson was directing. Now, as I've said before, that was not the first incident on set that really should have resulted in some kind of punishment. In 2013, he pleaded no contest to no juice related reckless driving after being arrested under a DUI, and 3 years before that, he allegedly shoved an assistant director, Ian Wolfe, during a late night location scene. That led to the studio ordering Gibson to take 8 hours of anger management, which clearly worked out. According to most of the people on set though, Thomas was a wild card. Some days he'd be friendly and accommodating, and the next, nuts. And at number 1, Richard Gere. Richard Gere is one of those actors that doesn't really act. You know, sometimes people just get hired for films because they have a face for it or a style. For Richard Gere, he did not have enough class and moxie to keep a handle on his role in the film The Lords of the Flatbush. Now, he was cast to star alongside Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, and according to Sly, these two just didn't get along. Their beef was strong and long-lasting throughout production until it finally came to a head when one day Richard was just a little bit too into one scene and grabbed Sylvester aggressively by his collar. When Sly told him to lay off, he laid in instead. Now, the scene was being filmed on Coney Island, and when the actors took a minute to take a break, they tried to break each other. Sly was eating a hot dog alone in his car. Sounds peaceful, right? Well, then suddenly Richard came in and joined him with half of a chicken dripping in mustard. Despite Sly's warning about the mustard, it dripped all over his pants, and in true Rocky fashion, he elbowed Richard in the face and threw him out of his car. The altercation resulted in Richard being fired from the project. Oh no! We have to decide between Richard Gere and Sylvester Stallone. I wonder how quick that decision was. Number 10, Emily Ratajkowski. Model Emily Ratajkowski had her podcast silently shut down by Sony Group the same week that the company sacked a significant portion of its podcast division. High Low with Emma Rata premiered in early 2023 and released 3 episodes a week on topics about everything from politics, philosophy, feminism, TikTok, and of course, relationships. Though it was fairly popular among international listeners, it struggled to sell advertising because brands wanted to reach US consumers. The people in charge at Sony said that they were very confident that Emily would be able to sell her podcast on a new platform. At the moment, it seems that Sony's predictions were false, as the show has yet to find a new home. The show was officially canceled in September of this year, and so far it's safe to say that there just hasn't been enough time between A and B for her to find a new home. For fans of Ratajkowski, they simply have to wait and see what happens. Considering the pull that this woman has and the fan base that does exist in the US, it won't be long before you're listening to High Love with Emma Ratatata. Sorry, that has been in my head since the moment I first said her name out loud. Number 9, Nick Cannon. Famous MC and baby maker Nick Cannon was fired from his podcast Cannon's Class and his longtime improv show Wild and Out. He was filmed making some pretty anti-Semitic statements that resulted in major backlash. Viacom CBS, the company that produces both shows, released a statement saying that they were deeply troubled that Nick had failed to acknowledge or apologize for perpetuating anti-Semitism and had decided to terminate their relationship with him. He took to Twitter to share his apology, in which he apologized to the Jewish community for putting them in such a painful position, which was of course never his intention. But he knows that the whole situation has hurt many people, and together that they would make it right. He added that he tried to reach out to Viacom to clear the air and nobody responded. However, Viacom claims that that did not happen. On top of his apology, he demanded full ownership of Wild and Out, a brand that he helped create. He called Viacom deceptive and claimed that they had been mistreating and robbing himself and the acting community for years, underpaying talent on their biggest brands like hip hop, BET, and of course Wild and Out. Cannon's comments were actually very anti-Semitic. Like, I had every intention of quoting some of them for you guys, but I honestly just can't find one that needs to be repeated. He said some truly demeaning things about the Jewish community, and him being fired from a podcast should be the least of his concerns. Number 8, Meghan Markle. Only a few months after announcing their exit from the royal family, Meghan announced that herself and Harry had signed a multi-year deal with Spotify to produce a podcast. They claimed that the show was designed to help build a community through shared experiences, narratives, and values. Their announcement did not include how much the couple were getting paid, though, which ended up being, a modest $20 million, just your average everyday paycheck. However, from the moment that this thing kicked off the ground, Spotify had grown reportedly frustrated with the couple's content and and their lack of productivity. According to executives at Spotify, the couple were taking way too long to actually build a team to produce episodes. There wasn't even a real structure to how things were going to be recorded. 6 months later, they produced one 33-minute holiday special. 6 months for 33 minutes of chit-chat. Many people started to question what was going on behind the scenes, because in that 33 minutes, there were guests like Elton John, Deepak Chopra, Stacey Abrams, and so many other people popping by. Why not just sit down with all those people for an hour each, like other people do? Joe Rogan does it. Nothing came after this episode for almost an entire year, but eventually they hired an audio lead. Several people denied her requests to join the podcast. As I have mentioned in previous videos about Megan specifically, Taylor Swift actually denied a request to be on the show, which was a basically handwritten letter to her front door. Despite releasing regular episodes, the team posted on social media claiming that all the credit for their show should go to the underpaid and undervalued producers. Spotify eventually decided to cancel the show for a few reasons, but mainly because they spent a year of their deal not doing anything. Despite the success that the show eventually received, Megan was canned for good. So fun fact, a lot of people have not been fired from podcasts. So for the rest of this list, we're going to be talking about people who were on their own talk shows and were unceremoniously let go. And to start it off, number 7, Sarah Silverman. Sarah is a very popular stand-up comedian. For a little while, she was out on the picket lines of the SAG strike, but now that's over, so awesome. But for a few years, she was sitting cozy on the set of her very own talk show called I Love You America. The show was aimed to give Sarah an outlet to poke fun at current political and emotional landscapes of the country. She would also from time to time bring on some celebrity guests to discuss their pasts and share stories. There was a lot going on for Sarah, whether it was connecting with firemen in Texas over making accidents in their pants, to going on a blind date with a conservative lobbyist in DC. She was never holding back. The show was pretty well received among Sarah's fans, but the executives over at Hulu just didn't appreciate the content of the show, and apparently big budget studios don't like it when you get political. Oh, weirdos. The show only lasted one season spanning 21 episodes, and it was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Variety Sketch in 2018 before its untimely demise. So at least she went away with a nomination. Number 6, Lily Singh. Lily got her start on YouTube in 2010, but quickly became a very successful woman both in film and on TV, being casted in projects like Bad Moms, Ice Age, and Dr. Cabby. In 2019, Lily was offered the chance to host her own late-night talk show, A Little Late with Lily Singh. The show was meant to be a follow-up to the popular show Last Call with Carson Daly, with Chrissy Teigen being offered the job at first. She turned down NBC, who then offered the job to Lily. The moment that the show premiered, things started going downhill fast. Now, while fans of Lily were tuning in and loving it, anyone else on the planet was annoyed, confused, and a little bit angry. The first episode has been summarized by thousands of reviews, like this is not me, as white men bad, Lily is bi, end of show. That's it, that's the review. Her show received massive amounts of hate, quickly garnering a 1-star review out of 10, something that I actually haven't seen while researching a topic yet here, so that's kinda neat. The hate continued towards Lily for 2 more seasons, 2 whole seasons, before they announced that the show was being cancelled by NBC. She simultaneously announced a deal with Netflix, setting herself to star in a new show, and I'm pretty sure that just premiered not that long ago. Lesson learned, no matter how controversial you are, there is always room at Netflix. Number 5, TJ Miller. Before being accused of misconduct by several women and having his career cancelled entirely, Miller was on a hot streak, starring in Silicon Valley and the Deadpool franchise. In 2017, he was given a green light to host an 8-episode talk series called The Gore Burger Show. But unlike normal talk shows, this was meant to act as both a talk show and a straight-up TV series. Miller voiced a massive blue furry puppet thing named Gore Burger. The alien takes a Japanese talk show hostage, and he learns what it means to be a true human from various celebrity guests, including Tig Notaro, Larry King, Rob Corddry, and Reggie Watts. The show was created after the success of the short sketch series of the same name on the Funny or Die YouTube channel, which is also responsible for the Weird Al Yankovic movie. Thank you guys so much for that one. In fact, it ran for 2 seasons on YouTube before being picked up for Prime TV. The concept was neat and had clearly been working online, however the show was cancelled after only 8 episodes due to the lack of star power that they were able to land on the show. And not to mention it was on super late at night. I'm pretty sure I watched this at like 1 in the morning regularly. However, some say the show was cancelled due to the allegations that were brought against Miller, as the cancellation announcement was only 1 week after the news began making headlines. Whether it was the controversy, the lack of celebs, the late night spot, who knows? This is one talk show that may return with a new voice behind the monster. I'd kinda like to see that. Number 4, George Lopez. George Lopez was one of the most bankable men around, and he kinda still is. His comedic talents and eccentric personality make him instantly entertaining, so much so that he was given his own sitcom in the 90s, but we're here to talk about his talk show, Lopez Tonight. The show first aired in November 2009 on TBS. They actually didn't feature all that many celebrity guests and mainly relied on audience interactions and George being a wild, energetic man. He did have some guests appear, with Kobe Bryant and Ellen DeGeneres being the most notable. Fortunately though, around the end of 2010 there was a massive feud between The Tonight Show and Conan O'Brien that caused him to quit the series and sign on with TBS to create his own show, which meant that Lopez would be pushed from a primetime 11 p.m. slot to like midnight, which is a lot less exciting. This move caused a steep decline in ratings, and as of August 2011 they decided to cancel his show entirely. The short-lived show will be remembered though as a good time, as the decline only came from the time change. The show itself was very well received, and I would not be surprised if a revival was ever in the works. Please make that happen. I love George Lopez, he was the only good part of Blue Beetle. Number 3, Kris Jenner. Simply titled Kris, the momager of the Kardashian clan, starred in a 6-week test run of a talk show. Not only did it receive terrible reviews, but it was cancelled before it was even picked up. Frank Kitcha, senior VP and president of programming at Fox TBS, admitted that he knew by the time that the test ended the show was just not gonna work. He claimed that Kris was uninteresting. She was trying to capitalize on her name and not her ability to, entertain people. When the cameras were on, she looked like a deer in headlights. She had trouble reading the prompters, and the conversations that she would have with her guests almost always felt like she was trying to take some kind of a survey. Where are you from? What's your hobbies? Which one of these pictures is not a sailboat? Are you a robot? He praised her hard work, but ultimately the project was a flop from the start. In fact, the studio later received hate mail aimed towards Kris, claiming her show would have been one of the worst Kardashian moves ever made. Or maybe this next one would have been. Number 2, Khloe Kardashian. The Kardashian clan have tried many tactics over the years to increase their never-ending flow of cash. Big sister Khloe decided that she wanted to do something outside of keeping up with the Kardashians while still being her real, authentic self. So, an online media outlet called FYI greenlit a talk series starring Khloe and her celebrity guests indulging in adult beverages while being interviewed, and called it Cocktails with Khloe, but with a K, because they're Kardashians. Get it? She essentially created an environment where she could get paid to drink all day and chat with her friends, which is exactly what the show became. Unable to secure A-list celebrities, she forced her family to appear on the show along with several of her reality star friends, and her sisters even forced their friends to appear, like Snoop Dogg and Chrissy Teigen. Khloe acted as the producer of the series and would regularly clash with basically everyone on staff about what direction things should go in. The drama, combined with the behavior of Khloe Kardashian behind the scenes, caused them to cancel the show, releasing only 14 episodes of the planned 23. And at number 1, Jada Pinkett Smith. Jada and her husband Will have made headlines in the news several times over the years, usually for something terrible like infidelity or face smacking or, being separated for 7 years. But earlier this year it was announced that her Facebook talk show Red Table Talk was going to be cancelled following several years on Meta. The decision was made following the distribution company's shift to no longer produce independent content, despite having a pretty solid slew of guests. The topics tended to drift into too much information territory, with her sit down with husband Will Smith being one of the more revealing episodes, and it still turned out there was more to be told. The show featured Jada, her mother, Adrienne Banfield Norris, and her daughter, Willow Smith, discussing various topics, with mom Jada being the main host when it came time to the heavy one-on-ones. Jada herself has been shaded in controversy over the past few years, as more infidelity rumors seem to be brought up, and oh look, it was all true. Everything was true. Go read her book or go watch one of our 20 videos about Jada Pinkett Smith. That woman is not okay. Her show was taken off of the internet, and despite trying to find a new home somewhere else, it's looking like that show will never see the light of day again. Thank the Lord. Number 10, Leah Remini. Morning talk shows seem to have a new host popping in and out every season. Shows like The View and The Talk are known for having a revolving door policy when it comes to their hosts. For one reason or another, many hosts have been fired over the years, from on-screen altercations to backstage drama. For King of Queens alumni Leah Remini, she was fired due to an issue stemming from fellow host Sharon Osbourne. Remini premiered in season 1 of the show, demonstrating blunt honesty and a certain laid-back style of conversation. According to Leah, Sharon Osbourne did not like that at all. Not only was Leah fired after the first season, but her fellow co-host Holly Robinson Pete was also let go for little to no reason. However, Remini posted on her Twitter page calling Sharon out for having too much power on the show, alleging that she knew Sharon had a hand in herself and Holly being let go from the program. Leah claimed that herself and Holly were just too street for Sharon's liking. They weren't funny enough or awkward enough to make good TV. Sharon has denied those allegations to this day, and no one has spoken to each other in person since the firing. Number 9. Shanine Doherty. Unfortunately for Shanine, she gained quite the reputation in Hollywood for being fired due to an issue with her co-star. She may or may not be making another appearance on this list. I guess you'll just have to stick around and find out. For the first entry though, we're looking back to a very popular series, teen drama 90210. The series following the lives of the Walsh family as they moved from Minneapolis to Beverly Hills. Doherty played the character Brenda Walsh, with her character eventually befriending several students at Beverly Hills High, including Donna Martin, played by Tori Spelling. The series was a hit after its initial season, however, with increased popularity came massive ego boosts. Doherty and Spelling started clashing on set all of the time, adding additional drama to the production team that they really did not need. Considering Tori's father, Aaron Spelling, was the producer on the show, it's pretty simple to piece together what happened. Doherty claims that she was officially let go for having a haircut that messed up the continuity of the show, but a wig could have fixed that, so you better believe Tori Spelling told her papa to boot her from the series. Number 8. Lindsay Lohan. In the early 2000s, Lindsay Lohan faced a ton of public scandals, but one that's not talked about often enough actually took place behind the scenes of a TV show called Ugly Betty. Lohan was a guest star on the show in the 3rd season, playing Kimmy Keegan. Kimmy was supposed to stick around for 6 total episodes, but eventually that number was shrunken down to 4, the reason being that her co-star and the lead of the show, America Ferrera, just did not get along with Lindsay on set. According to America, and actually quite a few of the Ugly Betty crew, Lindsay would show up with an entourage of people and usually under the influence of herbs and spices, and the production crew had to literally repaint her dressing room when she left because it was so messed up. One crew member alleged that she would cut images of her own face out of magazines and tabloid articles like she were making a collage or something. That sounds a little made up, but not out of the realm of possibility. America claims that one scene took over 30 takes to get right because they just kept flubbing their lines. Lindsay's team of buddies have been adamant that America had too much power and was the sole reason that she was asked to leave the show. Unfortunately, if you do bad things and enough people know about it, karma just kinda comes back around. Number 7. Selma Blair. It's funny that this entry involves Charlie Sheen getting a woman fired when he himself has been fired from several projects and for a few reasons. After being fired from 2.5 Men, Sheen returned to the acting world, headlining his own show called Anger Management. It premiered in 2012 with the cast featuring Hellboy alumni Selma Blair, playing his colleague and friend with benefits on the show. However, Sheen's terrible behavior continued to haunt him from his 2.5 Men days. Blair was very vocal on her problems with Charlie, especially his messy work ethic. Charlie heard about this and he was having none of it. He threatened to quit the show if Blair was going to remain a part of the cast. Sheen got his way and Blair was let go after starring in just 54 episodes. The show didn't last long though. Who would have guessed that a messy actor being the lead was a bad idea? The show was ultimately canceled in 2014. Number 6. Aaron Hayes. The King of Queens was arguably the peak of Kevin James and his comedy. For 9 seasons, people tuned in to see Kevin and his on-screen wife, Leah Remini, deliver entertaining banter and genuinely memorable moments as their chemistry together was electric. Kevin made another move into the world of sitcoms in 2016 when the show Kevin Can't Wait premiered. Another family-style sitcom, only this time Kevin was paired with actress Erin Hayes. While she was not a bad actor in the slightest, it was a special guest appearance from Leah Remini that sealed her fate. She appeared in the season 1 finale and their chemistry was still so strong that it was announced that Hayes' character would be written off the show and literally had her character tragically pass away. At the same time, Remini was announced as a new series regular beginning in season 2. Though the show cited that firing Erin was purely a creative choice and in no way was reflected in her abilities as a performer, the firing then sudden hiring of his co-star from the past is just a little bit of a coincidence. Just a little bit. Erin has never given a reason to believe that the studio was lying and has continued to have a pretty solid career, but luckily for her, season 2 tanked and the show was ultimately cancelled in 2018. Number 5. Bruce Willis. Before Bruce quit the acting business for good, he was part of some of the best action films of all time. The Try Hard series, The Fifth Element, and of course the first 2 Expendables movies. The Expendables is a stellar action series that sees Hollywood's most legendary leading men come together in one epic showdown. The first film was written and directed by Rocky himself, Sylvester Stallone, and he called in all of the favors. The cast included Jet Li, Jason Statham, Dolph Lundgren, and so many more, including Bruce Willis. Unfortunately, he was fired from the 3rd film in the franchise following a dispute with Sylvester involving his contract. Before the truth broke, Sylvester tweeted that he had great news, Bruce Willis was out and Harrison Ford was in for Expendables 3. And a few minutes later, he followed it up by simply writing, "Greedy and lazy, a sure formula for career failure." It was pretty obvious that something went down behind the scenes, and it was rumored that Willis had asked for over $1 million per day to film the 3rd movie. Despite their off-screen argument and Bruce's recasting, the two were able to reconnect and squash their beef for good. Number 4. Stacey Dash. While a ton of firing stories end with allegations, the situation between Lisa Ray McCoy and Stacey Dash is actually pretty straightforward. McCoy had Dash fired from their show. That's it. During the first season of the VH1 series Single Ladies, the 2 actresses clashed on basically everything, which led to McCoy taking action. She admitted to having a hand in getting her co-star fired before the start of the 2nd season. In an interview with Vibe, she stated that in Hollywood she learned to be a boss. She had to say to Stacey, "Get your mother flippin' finger out of my face," which was the final breaking point. For the 2nd season of the show, a replacement was brought in for Miss Dash, who went on to star in some other stuff. Number 3. Rose McGowan. So let's talk about the show Charmed for a second. It was a solid series that was on air for almost 10 years. The series followed 3 sisters that discover they are descendants of a line of female witches and are destined to fight against the forces of evil. It was a fun show, however, just because you play sisters on set doesn't mean that you're going to be close in real life. Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano had a very public altercation that resulted in a little incident on set being shared with the entire world. Rose claimed that Alyssa threw a fit in front of the crew, yelling that they didn't pay her enough to do the things she was doing, and only she didn't say the things she was doing, she said a swear word. She called Alyssa's behavior appalling and claimed that she cried every time the show would get renewed for another season because it just meant more time on a toxic set with Alyssa. Alyssa never shared her own comments on the situation, basically confirming what she was being accused of. Number 2. Bill Murray. Sony's big first move into the world of Charlie's Angels was actually fantastic. The first round of films starred Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu as the titular angels. They were filled with action, a little bit of comedy, and just one of the strangest performances ever delivered from Crispin Glover. I mean, one of. That dude does a lot of weird stuff. One interesting addition to the cast was the inclusion of Ghostbusters alumni Bill Murray as Bosley, their boss. Apparently the set was anything but a comedy though, after Bill found out that a scene was rewritten while he was away. In an interview with the news outlet Deadline, Lucy Liu spoke up about her time on set and the situation with Bill. Apparently, Bill was away for a family event when a scene needed to be refilmed. Instead of using a stand-in, it was decided that the scene could be filmed without Murray's character even being involved, so it went on without him. When he returned to find that the changes were made while he was gone, he was furious and just shouted at everyone, including Lucy. At first, she wasn't sure why he was aiming his comments at her. She didn't do anything, she didn't write it, right? She asked if Bill was specifically speaking to her, and apparently that just set him off. She decided to speak out on Bill's behavior on set, and he was ultimately written out of the sequel. Lucy is awesome for speaking her mind despite being a relatively unknown actor at the time, and so far she seems pretty glad that Bill's career is suffering for it, because Lucy was just the first of many celebrities to comment on his behavior, but we'll talk about that another time. Number 1. Janet Hubert. Will Smith got his big break in the acting world thanks to his time on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The show followed him as the titular prince living with his wealthy family in Bel-Air, surrounded by cousins, uncles, and Aunt Viv. In season 1, Aunt Viv was played by a woman named Janet Hubert Witten, but as a lot of people know, in season 2 she was recasted after an onset feud with Will went a bit too far. According to Will, Janet just viewed him as an antagonist in her life. She had been in a business for years when suddenly Will Smith popped in. She held this tinge of jealousy towards him because he just kinda came to town, got a job, and boom, that was it. Well, hey, that's what happens when you're good at your job, right? She was trying to convince the producers to give her character more time and allow her to breathe, but they said no, because it's not the Aunt Viv show, it's the Fresh Prince show. She fought back hard, but it was ultimately decided that she was gonna be asked to sit out of the rest of the series and be replaced by Daphne Maxwell Reid, who we all know and love as the real Aunt Viv.
And at number 10, Lily Singh. When it was announced that YouTuber Lily Singh got her own late-night show with NBC, the internet was set ablaze because this was a massive step for YouTubers and influencers breaking into mainstream media. But after the show aired, it was clear it was too big of a step for Lily and that she was not a natural when it came to hosting a show. After struggling through the first season, the show was picked up again for a second, but after the second season was proved to be no more interesting than the first, it was canceled by the network. When the series premiered in 2019, Singh became the first woman in more than 30 years and the first LGBTQ person to ever host a late-night program on a major network. Lily announced the cancellation in a statement where she thanked NBC and her fans and said it's only the beginning for her career in TV. She's apparently made a production deal with UTA as well as a comedy project with Netflix. And at number 9, Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly was one of the people who put Fox News on the map and helped it to become the top of the ratings chart. But he was fired after multiple allegations of misconduct against women at the studio came to light. At first, the network stood by their star, but then 80 companies decided to boycott putting ads on the network, which forced their hand. At the time, Fox News was going through a massive transformation, losing another one of its biggest stars, Megyn Kelly, after she stood by fellow host Gretchen Carlson for coming out against her at the network. O'Reilly never admitted to any wrongdoings, and following his firing, he told Today, quote, "If you look at the totality, this was a hit job, a political and financial hit job," blaming left-wing organizations for his demise. And at number 8, Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams got fired from another gig before she got the coveted position of having her own show. She used to work for radio station Hot 97, where she had her own radio show, and she would talk about hot topics in Hollywood. But in usual Wendy fashion, she took it too far and paid the ultimate price. Wendy decided to post photos of Diddy on the beach when he was not wearing any clothes, if you catch my drift. And you could see everything in these photos. The station was obviously not happy with this, and she was suspended for the action along with making a permanent enemy out of Diddy. After some time, the network decided to cut their losses and fire her. But after this, Wendy did not stay down for long, and she ended up landing her own daytime show on network TV. Talk about a comeback. Although due to health concerns, Wendy is no longer hosting the show, and it will be overtaken by the Sherry Shepherd show. And at number 7, Matt Lauer. In 2017, NBC was at the center of a huge scandal when they suspended broadcaster Matt Lauer only minutes before he was set to go live on air. Instead of the usual Lauer and Savannah Guthrie starring the broadcast, it was instead Guthrie and Hoda Khattab. The women started the broadcast with transparency, sharing an internal memo that had been sent out just minutes before announcing the suspension of Lauer. In this memo, it claims that multiple allegations had been made that Lauer engaged in inappropriate conduct with other NBC employees. These incidents started at the 2014 Sochi Olympics and apparently continued when the women returned back from the trip. In the statement, NBC chairman admitted that there was reason to believe these were not isolated incidents. Lauer issued his own statement days later, admitting to the acts. He was then fired by the network and has not worked since. And at number 6, Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne was fired from her hosting gig on The Talk after she got into a heated debate with fellow host Cheryl Underwood while speaking about her good friend Piers Morgan. Morgan got tons of backlash after making some nasty comments about Meghan Markle and her interview with Oprah. Then the women of The Talk discussed the incident, and Osbourne took her friend's side. After this, it was announced that Osbourne was let go from the show. CBS said in a statement that her behavior, quote, did not align with our values. When speaking about her firing with Bill Maher, she said, quote, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I've been called so many things in my life, but a racist is not one I will take. Osbourne continued, quote, she's entitled to her opinion, Piers is entitled to his, and that's what it's all about. Disagreeing with someone does not make you a racist in my book. A lot of Sharon's fans disagreed with her firing, and the ratings of the show plummeted after she left. Halfway number 5, Chris Cuomo. CNN's Chris Cuomo has officially been fired from his network after an investigation uncovered the anchor helped his brother, disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo, during his scandal. Andrew Cuomo's crimes include government corruption and sexual misconduct. Earlier, they announced he was going to be suspended, barring the results of the investigation, but partway through, they uncovered evidence to fire him. CNN writes, quote, while in the process of that review, additional information had come to light. Despite the termination, we will investigate as appropriate. This all came on the heels of an investigation by the New York Attorney General's office, which suggested that he was heavily involved in his brother's scandal. Following his termination, reports are coming out that Chris was accused of sexual harassment, and that's part of the reason for his termination. So it's clear no network will want to touch him now. And at number 4, Rush Limbaugh. The late Rush Limbaugh was a radio giant and had the biggest radio show in the country for many years. But before he became known for his own show, he was a football commentator for ESPN that ended up getting fired. During his stint as a football analyst on ESPN's Sunday NFL Countdown in 2003, he was commentating on quarterback Donovan McNabb and said, quote, the media has been very serious that a black quarterback do well. There is little hope invested in McNabb, and he has a lot of credit for the performances of his team that he didn't deserve. The defense carried this team. After the comments, he got tons of backlash considering they were clearly racially charged, and Limbaugh was only supposed to be speaking about the performance of these athletes. In the end, he decided to resign from the position, I'm sure after some long talks with the network. He said in a statement, quote, the great people at ESPN did not want to deal with this kind of reaction. After leaving that gig, he started up his own radio show called The Rush Limbaugh Show, and it was a huge hit right up until he passed away. And at number 3, Mike Richards. After the passing of legendary Jeopardy host Alex Trebek, Mike Richards stepped in as one of the potential frontrunners to replace him as host. Richards had been an executive producer on the show for years prior and decided to put his hat in the ring to host when the position became available. However, that stint did not last, and shortly after Richards was announced as the new host, problematic behavior from his past started to resurface. These allegations were regarding Richards' behavior and comments towards women and minorities. Following the backlash, he was not only fired as host, but he was also fired from his executive producer position. The show released a statement saying, quote, we had hoped that when Mike stepped down from the host position at Jeopardy, it would have minimized the disruption and internal difficulties we have all experienced these last few weeks. That clearly has not happened. And at number 2, Nick Cannon. Nick Cannon was fired from many of his shows and hosting gigs after he went on a strange anti-Semitic rant. In June of 2020, Nick Cannon was interviewing Professor Griff, who has a history of making anti-Semitic comments. During this interview, Cannon went on a bizarre rant calling Jewish and white people savages. At one point he said, quote, the people that don't have melanin are a little less. Adding, quote, they're acting as animals, so they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. After Cannon did not apologize for the comments, Viacom CBS cut ties with Cannon. He was fired from Wild 'N Out, an improv series that he had hosted and starred in for 15 seasons. Cannon has also hosted other shows for Viacom CBS-owned Nickelodeon channel over more than 20 years and was named chairman of spin-off Teen Nick in 2009. In a statement, the network said, quote, Viacom CBS condemns bigotry of any kind. We categorically denounce any forms of anti-Semitism. And finally, number 1, Tom Bergeron. Tom Bergeron hosted the hit show Dancing with the Stars since it started in 2005. But that all changed in 2020 when he was abruptly fired. Since then, he has given more details, and it's clear that he and production butted heads. In one interview, he admitted that he saw it coming and was not shocked when he was fired. This is because he had spoken up against the things he disagreed with, to the dismay of the show. Bergeron said, quote, the show had changed a lot for me starting in early 2008. The show I left was not the show that I loved. We had very clear, sometimes public differences of opinion about the new showrunner and some of the execs, and happily, I was at a point in my life and career where I didn't have to just shut up and take it. Although he never got into specifics, it was rumored that a huge point of contention between him and the show were the political stars that came on. He previously shared his disagreement with President Trump's former press secretary Sean Spicer coming on the show.